Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who understand that there's more to entrepreneurship than finding the latest flash-in-the-pan strategies, who understand that in order to build your empire, you need a solid foundation. I wholeheartedly believe that entrepreneurship is the biggest self-development journey you can be on, and it's my mission to help you make that journey easier. In this show, I bring together the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist and mindset coach behind this show, and you're listening to the Wired for Success podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. And I have to say, I'm so excited about my podcast guests today. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome speaker, author, coach, and professional endurance athlete, Travis Macy, and his wonderful dad, Mark Macy, who is also an amazing person and an incredible endurance athlete. I saw Travis and Mark on the Amazon Prime show, The World's Toughest Race, Eco Challenge Fiji, and they were so inspiring in so many ways that I just had to reach out to them and get in touch. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. First, I want to welcome you guys and thank you so much for making time to be on the show today. It's such an honor to meet you.
It's great to meet you and be on your show. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Claudia. Thank you for the generous introduction. And yeah, we're glad to be here with you in the audience today.
Awesome. I know you both have done some absolutely amazing things in your careers as athletes, and I leave it up to you to share your favorite successes and achievements with our audience today. So, Mark, why don't you start and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about some of the amazing things that you have done?
I don't know what really amazing things I've done. You know, I'm just kind of a regular guy and an old guy, and I've been an athlete for many years, and mostly adventure racing. I've raced all over the world, and just had a great time doing it, and I don't think of myself as a great athlete or anything. I just have been lucky to, like I said, travel all over the world, adventure racing, and it's just something that I've done and been happy to do it.
That's so.
I got to tell you that I have Alzheimer's, and at times I have a little bit of time speaking and stuff, and hope you can put up with that. It won't be too bad, I hope.
No, you're doing fine. Do you have maybe a favorite race that you still think about from time to time?
I'll tell you what, the world's toughest race was probably my favorite. It was the last race that we were on, and it was just unbelievably cool. I can't say anything other than it was great. I got to race with Travis, and that's the first time we've ever really raced in a big race, and it was perfect.
Yeah, it was great. So for everyone who hasn't seen the show, go watch it. It's great to watch, and we'll talk about it a little bit later as well. So Travis, what about you? What should our listeners know about you and your achievements? What have been some of your favorite achievements so far?
Well, thanks, Claudia. Similar to that, I'm just a normal guy who's put a lot of time into the endurance racing realm, and I think that's maybe even a key point for the listeners is that most people who achieve success in a given area, it's a lot less of some innate talent or, God-given destiny and more of just consistent hard work. And, Dad and I have decided over the years to spend a lot of time doing something that we inherently enjoy, which is exercising outside, whether that's running or biking or paddling or some of these other sports. And, the consistency pays off. So I've also been lucky to race around the world and in adventure races and mountain bike races and ultra running races. And the travel has been really a lot of the reward, making friends all over the place and, going to places like rural China out in the desert that, I never would have seen without racing has definitely been rewarding. It's been great to be able to take my wife and kids to some of those places and also get to share some of those trips with my parents and siblings. And I have been fortunate to do well in some of those races, whether it's adventure races or we have a neat series here in Colorado called Leadman. It's all above 10,000 feet in the high Rockies and running and mountain biking kind of throughout the summer. So doing things like that. And, I've kind of shifted most of my attention recently to coaching other adult endurance athletes, and then also speaking and kind of applying some of those principles, beyond racing to the business world and the important things that we do with our families and just our own personal growth.
It's amazing. And I've listened to the audio version of your book, The Ultra Mindset. So I know some of the stories, some of your racing stories, and it was just like, wow, that demonstrates such a level of physical and mental fitness just to go through these races that absolutely fascinated me. And I have to be honest, until a few months ago, I didn't even know those kind of races existed. And for me, it was like, I thought the Ironman was as tough as it gets. And quite frankly, I thought that you have to be at least a little bit crazy to do stuff like that. And I didn't know there was a whole other level on top of that kind of considered the Ironman more or less a walk in the park. Well, maybe not a walk in the park, but something that's not that hard, because you're doing races that are even more challenging and even more demanding. And this really shifted my mindset regarding what's possible for any one of us. And it reminded me how often we are just limited by our own assumptions and by our own beliefs. And once we start to believe that something is actually possible, we open ourselves up to all sorts of new possibilities and opportunities, right? But before we talk more about mindset and all sorts of interesting topics, I wanted just to quickly share how I found out about you guys and about the world of ultra endurance. So one fine evening, a couple of months ago, when I was just scrolling through Amazon Prime and looking for something interesting to watch, I came across that show, The World's Toughest Race, Eco Challenge Fiji. And as I said, I had never heard anything about adventure racing before. And it was probably just due to the fact that Bear Grylls hosted the show that I decided to check it out, because the kids and I had recently watched Bear's interactive show, You versus Wild, and the kids loved it. So anyway, when Bear explained what the challenge was all about, I thought it was absolutely insane. And I was wondering what kind of people take on such a challenge. So what's the mindset? How are those people thinking? And that's what really fascinated me. And if you're listening to this show and you have never heard about ultra running or adventure racing or the Eco Challenge, that's okay. And I leave it to Travis and Mark to explain what those things are. So could you please explain a little bit about what ultra running is, what adventure racing is in general, and how the Eco Challenge fits into this picture?
Yeah, sure. So an ultra run is technically just any running race that's longer than a marathon. So the common distances would be 50 kilometers, 50 miles, 100 kilometers, 100 miles, more and more. There's also 200-mile races, and then kind of multi-day stage races. And so that kind of ultra running really has been around for a long time. And again, it's a fringe sport. A lot of people don't know much about these kind of sports, and that's fine. But within the community, there's tough competition. I think these sports have grown in prominence just as far as the media kind of opportunities and running shoe companies getting into it, et cetera. Adventure racing is a multi-sport race. So the core disciplines are running, mountain biking, paddling. That paddling could be canoeing, kayaking, sailing, rafting, pack rafting, really just about anything. There's usually fixed ropes in these adventure races. So you get to a climbing crag and they've set up ropes and you're ascending the ropes or rappelling or doing Tyrolean traverses or fixed lines. So pretty technical there. And then they usually throw at you unique disciplines to that area. So like when Dad did the Eco Challenge in Morocco in 1999, they had camel riding in that one. And various races around the world, we've had horseback riding, or we've had one of the races I did in China, we had this thing, we called it the princess chair, and it was this wooden chair kind of on bamboo sticks, and one person in the team literally sat in that chair that we called the princess chair, and the other teammates had to carry him some distance, and this again was some sort of cultural thing, I guess, in that area historically. So it's a lot of creativity, a lot of flexibility. You kind of got to be ready for everything. Some of the races are solo races or two-person races, but the biggest races, like the one in Fiji that you're talking about, are usually four-person co-ed teams, and that's a great part of the sport as well, because it really is all about teamwork and how do you support each other. And it's not a relay race, like you're literally staying together with your team for who knows, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 days really of nonstop racing. So it's super dynamic. It's very challenging physically, but it's also a big intellectual challenge, and I really like that. There's a lot of thinking, a lot of planning. The course is not laid out or marked, so you're navigating with map and compass the whole way. That's another big piece of it as well. And then especially in those long races, you're managing sleep, and when do you go, when do you stop. That's a big challenge and a fun part of it, because the clock is always ticking, and you got to figure out how much do you sleep, and when do you push. So it's a real unique dynamic sport. I think it makes for good TV. I thought the Amazon Prime folks did a good job with that production, and they talk about the competition side, but they also tell the stories, and I think one of the things that you see with the teams that are portrayed are again, these are mentally tough people. But I think, as you said, Claudia, a big key is just the perspective. When you have a different perspective on sort of what's possible for you and your team, that really is a lot of what makes it possible to do things that look pretty tough.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love running and I love being outdoors, but what you described sounds terrifying. It still sounds terrifying. And I mean, if that wasn't challenging enough, Mark had just been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease not too long before you started the race, right? And I mean, I really admire the fact that you did not let that diagnosis stop you from participating in such a demanding challenge. And most people would probably consider, maybe kick back, take some time off, relax, go on a nice vacation or something like that. And you guys chose to take on the world's toughest race. So Mace, do you still remember what made you decide to join the race anyway, despite that diagnosis?
Well, that's just what I do. I started doing this kind of stuff. Ironman was the first race that I did that, was really tough. And I started doing Ironman many years ago, back in the old days with Dave Scott and those guys and everything. And I just moved on from there. And when it came time to go to the world's toughest race. It never crossed my mind that I wasn't going to do it. I was afraid that they might not let me do it because of my diagnosis, and I think the reason why they allowed me into the race, despite my diagnosis, is I knew the people who put on the race for years and years, and I think they gave me a break and let me in, and I was very happy to be in the race, and it was great to have Trav there with me. So it's just a normal thing to do for me, actually.
It's just amazing. It's a normal thing to do. Well, this is such a great mindset to have. And I think we can all learn a lot from the way that you're handling this illness. It was so inspiring, as Travis said before, to see the support you got from everyone on the team during this eco challenge. And I know that it's not always easy to acknowledge that things have changed and that you maybe need to accept more help from others. So is that something that you found hard to accept, Mark?
Yes, it was. It was hard for me to do that because, for all these years, I've just been going on about my way, and I'm doing what everybody else does. And I did a lot of navigating and stuff in those days and with my team, and it's changed a bit. There was a lot of things that I wasn't capable of doing. Travis mentioned climbing fixed ropes and stuff, and I couldn't do it. My Alzheimer's has caused me to have problems with my vision, and I wasn't able to see the fixed ropes, and as a result, I didn't participate in that. And that's quite frankly the reason why we didn't finish the race, is because I wasn't able to see the fixed ropes, and that's pretty difficult for me to take.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to put yourself in any danger. I mean, you have to know when it's wise to stop and not go after it, right? But
yeah, that would have been a real danger for me to try to do that in the dark. That was a bigger problem. We're in the dark, and if it would have been in the daylights, I probably would have been able to do the rope climbing, but couldn't do it in the dark.
Sure. And did you sometimes think, maybe in the beginning, why did that happen to me? Why me? I mean, you've always been very healthy, right? You were an athlete. So did those questions come up for you?
Certainly they did. I just, when I got diagnosed, I thought, man, how could this possibly happen to me? First of all, I've been, perfectly healthy all my life. And I've, thought I don't deserve this. I've, raised other people's kids, and, I've tried to be a good person my whole life, and it doesn't seem fair. And, over time I've gotten used to it, and, it's just one of those things. And it's too bad that I have this disease, but I've got it, and I've got to deal with it. And it's my intent to kick this disease butt, and I'm gonna beat it. I mean, everybody says you can't outlive Alzheimer's. Well, I intend to outlive Alzheimer's. I'm gonna beat it. There's no question in my mind. That's what I'm going to do these days. And, I'm going to continue doing everything that I do, and I'm not going to stop.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think maybe it's just the same thing that we mentioned before. It's all a matter of perspective. As long as you believe it's not possible, maybe it's not possible. But as soon as you start believing it is possible, why not? Maybe you will be the first one to beat it.
Well, I think so. I got another friend who just got diagnosed, and he talks the same way. And I think maybe he and I are going to be the first two guys to beat it.
Absolutely. I mean, if I had to bet on someone, it would be you or you guys.
Yeah.
Sure, you're going to do this. And I remember that I had some similar questions like these, why me? Why did that happen? I had the same thoughts when I was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 28. And I had always done the things that you were supposed to do, like eat a healthy diet, exercise, and so on. And it felt really kind of unfair. And it felt like I had done all the things that should have avoided something like that, right? But I really snapped out of that kind of thinking pretty quickly. And later on, I realized that when you think about health from a holistic standpoint, it's not just about diet and exercise. I mean, there are dimensions like the mental or emotional health, for instance, that are probably equally as important, as they can wreak havoc with your physical health, even though you're doing all the other things that you're supposed to do, right? So it's something that I've found a lot of people, especially the high performers, often don't realize. They put so much focus on their diet and maybe their exercise plans, but they try to suppress any kind of negative emotions that might come up for them. They stay stuck in toxic relationships, or they are being far too hard on themselves all the time. And they don't see how these kind of things can also negatively impact their performance and their physical health. But the body and the mind, they are connected, and you can't separate one from another. So stress in one dimension of your life will always affect other areas of your life if you're not dealing with that stress effectively. And is that something that you've experienced too, Travis? So for instance, when you heard about your dad's Alzheimer's diagnosis, that must have been like really, really hard for you. And how did you deal with that stress and the uncertainty it created in your life?
Yeah. Oh man, Claudia, so much good stuff there. And I think you're right on, as a student of, science and especially just sort of the physical athletic performance. I think you're exactly right. And, to add to your list, one thing I think a lot of people who see themselves as high performers neglect is sleep. And that's something that we're learning more and more about, how important it is for everything, including, staving off things like Alzheimer's. And, you gotta sleep. It's really important. And back to your question, the Alzheimer's diagnosis was incredibly challenging. That's something that no one wants to hear. I can only imagine, when you received a very a challenging diagnosis, especially at such a young age, it hits you hard. It's a new awakening, and it was indeed very tough for me, especially initially, as far as just a lot of anxiety, a lot of what I realize now was jumping too far ahead to hypothetical scenarios, that may or may not happen in the future. And, planning for the future is always a good thing. And, I recommend that people do that, but you got to focus on the present, and you got to focus on what are the current strengths. Let's focus less on deficits or weaknesses or challenges, and let's focus on the strengths, and let's really develop a team approach. And I think that's something that we've come to over time. We really do have a great team, and that starts with dad and with mom, and then goes to to the kids, to the siblings, the family, and then also friends who are a big part of the team. Some folks who've watched World's Toughest Race may remember Marshall and Heather Ulrich, and they happen to live nearby where mom and dad live. And, those guys are a team. I mean, dad can't drive anymore, but Marsh can drive over and pick them up, and they can go out and do their thing. And that's a big strength. Hey, maybe it's challenging to, look at the retirement plans online or calculate numbers or look at a calendar. But when dad's out there on the trail, I mean, they're two guys doing their thing. They're chatting away and having fun and being physically fit. And that's really a focus on the strength for sure. So, as far as my own journey there, yes, I had to learn to become more comfortable with uncertainty and with the unknown. And I think that's something that probably most people can relate to with this last year of the pandemic. We've kind of realized that the world is probably much more out of our control than we may have hoped. And especially for entrepreneurs, that's been tough. Hey, maybe you were lucky and your business happened to be in the right field and it's just boomed, or maybe it was in the wrong field for a pandemic and things really fell apart. It's a lot of that is just unlucky, and you can bounce back. I've also let's see, there is a researcher who talks about the idea of ambiguous loss. And I listened to this on a podcast. I think it was with Pauline Boss, and the idea was when you're going with something like Alzheimer's, you're going to go through the cycles of grief repeatedly because it is, it's not a finality. It's this long transition, and just being more comfortable with that. Of okay, maybe overall I am in a better place of acceptance, in a strengths-based approach. But maybe there are going to be waves of sadness or anger or these other emotions that can be somewhat overwhelming. But being okay with that, okay, these are waves. They will pass, and I know that I can handle it. So that's really helped me. And another outlook that's helped me. There's a new book called The Comeback Quotient by Matt Fitzgerald, and he talks about this concept of what he calls ultra realism. And he says an ultra realist is someone who, when faced with adversity, which we all are, right? Sometimes we know it's coming, and often we don't. No one saw the pandemic coming, right? Claudia, you didn't see leukemia coming. We had no idea Alzheimer's was coming. These things, they just, they come at you, and it's kind of bleak, but it's also realistic. I mean, that's life. Adversity is going to come. So an ultra realist is someone who, when faced with this adversity, they, as quickly as they can, they accept it, and then they embrace it, and then they address it. And I like those three simple steps. That's definitely helped me with the Alzheimer's journey. It's helped me. About 10 weeks ago, I got COVID, and that's something that a lot of people around the world can relate to. And thankfully, I didn't end up in the hospital or anything like that. So I have a lot to be thankful for. But it has very much impacted my athletic training, and I've had to realize, like, okay, for some period of time here, and I don't know how long that period is going to be, I've just got to take it day by day, and I've got to listen to my body and really address what's going on. So, I think there are certain skills. I think that taking on challenges by choice can help us practice that resilience, and then apply it to the challenges that don't come by choice, right? The diagnoses, Claudia, you mentioned, your kids, the day-to-day parenting. Parenting is awesome, and it is tough. It is going to, push you to dig to your well of resilience, over and over again. And you got to be ready for it, because you have no choice. You are all in, no matter what.
That's so true. And I love how you stay so positive and so proactive. And that's a great mindset to have. And it's great for any listeners who might be facing similar challenges at the moment. So follow those steps. Those are great for just, becoming more comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's probably something we all have to learn. We all like to stay cozy in our comfort zones, and it has become really tough for us to venture outside of that comfort zone, and we see it as a danger and a threat because we are not used to it anymore. Now, talking about facing uncertainty, I mean, that's definitely something the two of you were already familiar, as you said, even before Mark's diagnosis, because of your experiences as ultra runners and adventure racers, right? Because when you do these kind of extreme races, there's always the possibility of something going wrong. There's always a bit of danger that you can't eliminate. no matter how well you prepare. I mean, the weather might change from one second to the next. You might get injured. You might break your bike. I don't know what else could happen out there. Probably a lot of things. And you have to improvise and just trust that you can figure everything out as you go. So do you think that those experiences really helped you cope better with the disease? So Mark, what do you think as a athlete, has being an athlete helped you deal with your diagnosis better?
I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I think that I personally I'm pretty good at just taking what comes to me. I take it and I do the best I can with it, and I'm pretty good at it, and despite the fact that I've got Alzheimer's and it's a bad thing, but I'm a very happy guy. I'm happy. I've got a great family. I got a great wife. I've got kids. I've got, we got tons of brand new kids in the family, and we're all happy, and we've got a happy family, and that includes me with Alzheimer's, and Travis with, his adjustment to it, and we're all a good, happy family, and I think we're doing just fine.
That's perfect. I mean, that's just when this mindset has become so ingrained that it's your personality. It has become your personality. And I think that's why it might be easier for you than for other people to deal with these kind of challenges. But Travis, what do you reckon? So how's your ultra mindset helping you face uncertainty and deal with all those challenges that come up on a consistent basis without getting overwhelmed all the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, great question. And do I feel overwhelmed at times? Absolutely. I think we all do. And I think, again, another key is like you'll look at someone who has achieved some sort of success. And sometimes we think, especially through social media, you're looking at, someone's highlight reel and you think, oh my gosh, it's been easy for this person to do this, that, or whatever in the business world or the sports world or anything else. And, I can guarantee it's not been easy because we all struggle and we all have challenges, and the people who pull through and achieve are usually just they're consistent. They go out and they keep doing the work even when it is hard, and probably they've learned some tools that work well for them to manage things like overwhelm and fear, these things that we all hear. I know for me, one of my greatest tools is just daily exercise, man. I go out if I'm feeling down or overwhelmed or stressed, pressed for time or whatever, man. I go out and I run or bike and I come back and I feel like a different person. I'm more calm and I'm confident and I'm ready to go. So you got to figure out what tools work for you. And to go back to some of your previous comments, taking risks. You look at something like the world's toughest race. Was there a risk of going out in a 400-mile, 671K course through the Fijian jungle for 10 days, with Alzheimer's sort of as our fifth extra teammate? Was there a risk in that? Hell yeah. There's all kinds of risk, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But I think something that often people fail to do, we look at the risk of doing something and we don't look at the risk of what if you don't go for it? What if you don't put yourself forward and do this thing? And at that time, for our family, we realized, hey, if we're just to sort of throw in the towel and, we know we've got this race out there that's really important to our family and especially to Dad. If we don't go for it, that's a big risk as well. When you pull out and don't do something you want to do. And I think that's very applicable to entrepreneurs, especially someone, maybe you're thinking about making the jump, right? You got your standard job and you've been building this thing on the side, and the time comes, like, are you going to go all in and become self-employed? That's a really hard decision. And, when I was facing that decision almost 10 years ago now, my wife and I were actually simultaneously kind of moving from traditional employment, where especially in America, you have things like health insurance and retirement savings. I mean, we knew that we were facing $1,500 every month. That's what healthcare insurance costs here when you got a family of four. Like, we got that, you got a mortgage, you got everything else. Is there a risk? Absolutely. But if you don't go for it again, that I think is even a bigger risk. And, people fail to realize, like, hey, you can try something. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back, right? It's okay to fail, to try, and it doesn't work. You can always backpedal. But sometimes you got to go for it. And I've kind of decided in my life, I want to, if I can, and when I can, I want to spend less time sort of moving away from what I'm afraid of and more time moving towards what I want, kind of that proactive thing. And very often when you move towards that thing that you want, you have to go right through what you're afraid of. And that's okay. The more that you do it, the more you become comfortable with it.
That's so true. And I relate to that so much, because when I faced the diagnosis and I got the diagnosis that I had leukemia, what I realized was that all of my decisions that I was making at the moment, or in that phase of my life, they were all fear-based. They were all trying to avoid things that I was not comfortable with. And what I decided then was that I was not going to let my life be dictated by fear anymore. And I was just going to get out there, do the things that I was or had been too afraid to do before, like move to New Zealand, stay there for a few years, just try new things that I was too afraid before. So I quit the job that I had at the time. I got out of a toxic relationship. So I did all the things that I knew I should have done long ago, but I just didn't, because I was too afraid of all the uncertainty and I didn't know how to deal with that. And once you start facing your fears and you get over them, you realize you were in this self-imposed, like you built your own little cage, and you were too afraid to get out of the cage and experience what you really wanted to experience. So I totally relate to that. And I totally agree with what you said about the parallels between facing those challenges, maybe as an athlete and as an entrepreneur, because facing uncertainty is one of them. There's no doubt about it. But you also have to be willing to leave that comfort zone behind and to risk something to win, as you said. And you have to take that leap of faith. You can prepare best as best as you can. And then you still have to trust that everything will work out in the end. And I mean, Travis, you have written this wonderful book that I mentioned before about the ultra mindset and how you can apply it to different areas in your life. So maybe you can highlight just one of those 8 core principles that you describe in your book and share your thoughts and how you can apply that principle in different areas of your life.
Yeah, more good stuff there, Claudia. And I think you're just right on. You gotta take the risks. And if you're always waiting for things to be perfect, the perfect circumstances to do this, that, or the other, you're not going to do anything, because I can guarantee things are not going to feel perfect. You're always going to feel somewhat unprepared, especially when you're making that jump. And a story that you can tell yourself is, maybe when there is some discomfort, when there's some nervousness, there's some butterflies, that's actually a sign that you're moving in a good direction, right? And you don't want to always feel like that, day in and day out, but that's an important thing to feel. And that's something that I always, I like to tell my clients, when they're thinking about, let's say, a new race distance. Maybe you've done a marathon and now you're thinking about running 50 miles. Well, man, it's a huge increase, and it's a big unknown. I can tell you everything about how it's going to feel to run 50 miles and how you should eat and what gear you should use and all that. But there's still a lot of unknown, and that's okay. And the fact that you're standing on that starting line, on that threshold, again, whether this is the race or in your business or some other area, you're standing there and you're feeling those butterflies and you're feeling scared and uncertain. That's a sign that you're growing, right? And that's good. It's a sign that you're alive. Sometimes people, they stop pushing themselves and they stop doing that. And it's hard to feel alive if you're not doing that. So back to the book, the Ultra Mindset. One of the principles, or sort of eight ideas or principles in there that mix in with some stories, but a lot of these, originally come from Dad, and they're just kind of things that were fleshed out, throughout my childhood and early adulthood. And one of Dad's favorite sayings is, and always has been, it's all good mental training. And
that.
The idea here is just think about these voices in your head, think about the stories that you're telling yourself, and see if you can, whether it's something like it's all good mental training, that just means that you're going through something hard, but there's a value here. And the value is that you're training mentally, as I'm sure you've talked with many of your guests, you're training mentally for what's to come. That's a great story. That's a lot better than, sort of the this sucks mindset. And I wish I wasn't doing this right now. So that's one of them. And again, there's a lot of other good stories and ideas in there from Dad and from me. And think about what you're telling yourself. Another story that I tell myself, especially when the negative thoughts start to creep in. And I think that's true for many of us who, we can get the momentum going and our brains, clasp onto something good and positive very tightly. And that's a good thing. You can use that as a superpower, but when the mind starts clenching on the negative stories, that can be really tough, and it can really bring you down. And one thing I tell myself at those times is that I don't have to believe everything that I think. And, maybe it's sort of a Zen sort of thing of watching your thoughts and, okay, here's a thought, right? But that's not me. I don't have to believe that. And I can separate myself from it. That's definitely helped me as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. And I mean, what you said about fear, I couldn't agree more, because I used to hate public speaking so much. Like, I hated it so much. And then I was kind of like, okay, so I hate it so much, I need a podcast. So here's me doing a podcast because I hated public speaking so much that I just had to get over this resistance. I felt that it was holding me back. It was keeping me from reaching the people that I wanted to reach. And I had to figure out a way to make it work for me. So this is why I started my podcast, basically.
Yeah, good for you, Claudia. And you're clearly doing a great job with it. And that's another thing about, working with, in the podcast modality, is that's a great, appropriate step. Another thing that people, that makes things overwhelming is, let's say you see the world's toughest race on TV and you're like, oh, I'd like to do that. Well, you can do it. I guarantee you, if you want to do that, you can. But you got to take the right steps. You're not going to go from the couch to 10 days in Fiji in one step, right? And if you want to build up your speaking ability, start with something like the podcast and figure out what are those gradual steps along the way. Maybe you can figure it out with yourself. Maybe you chart it out. Maybe you work with some sort of coach, whether that's a business coach or a life coach or endurance coach or whatever. Make those gradual steps, and each step is going to feel tough, but it's also it's going to be doable, right? It doesn't have to be everything all at once.
Yeah, I mean, you both have achieved so much, and I know that to get to that level of success, you need to be very deliberate, you need to be very focused, and you need to be very consistent, something we've already talked about. So do you have any tips for people out there who are struggling with consistency right now? Mark, what do you think? Do you have any great tips for staying consistent?
I don't know exactly what to say, but I'm a little bit different than most people. I think I jump into things pretty quickly. The first race I ever did, running race, was a marathon. That was my first race. I, didn't know anything really about running except that I wanted to start doing it. And after doing a marathon, I saw guys doing 100-mile races, and I thought I'm gonna give that a shot, and I did a 100-mile race without thinking about it. Just did it, and it worked out okay, and here I am. So I'm just a little bit different than most people. I just let things go, and I just have at it and see what happens.
That's great. I mean, if it works for you, good for you. What about you, Travis?
Yeah.
Do you have any more tips for being consistent for people who are not like your dad, who struggle with that?
Yeah. I mean, dad, for dad, always sort of the just do it, back to the good old days, dad used to have this Nike cut off Nike shirt with all these holes in it. You remember this, Dad, that he wore like in the 90s? And it was the sweetest shirt ever. And I think it said like something like, eat right, drink lots of water, get plenty of sleep, go like hell. Just do it. And so, I mean, honestly, a lot of the really successful athletes and business people I coach, for many people, it actually is less of like, all these self-help tips and strategies and stuff, and more of just keep it simple. Just keep it simple and go. Because sometimes we overanalyze all these things, and pretty soon you're spending so much time with, accountability, tools and calendars and whatever that you're not actually doing the thing. So in some ways, just doing it, I think, is a great tip. Then on the other hand, maybe you are the person who needs and flourishes with concrete tools. So a lot of it is, first of all, you got to know yourself. What is going to work for you? What's worked for you in the past? What have you tried for consistency and it hasn't worked? Maybe it's keeping it fresh, trying something new. For a lot of people, it is, some type of social connection. You got your accountability partner for training, right? If you have a plan to get up and exercise with your friend, you're not going to hit that snooze button because, oh my gosh, so-and-so's counting on me. I have to get up and do this. Well, if that works for you, do that. If it works for you to have a coach or a boss or a mentor or whatever, again, this could be business or sports or wellness. That's a great tool for many people. One tool that's helped me that, maybe is less sort of all these typical tools is I have just a repeating calendar item on my phone, on the Google Calendar each morning. And it's kind of a morning sort of mantra or vision or just things that I know reading this each day is going to help put me in the right place. And I like to do that in the morning when I'm making my coffee and I'm doing some stretching and, trying to grapple with the fact that here's another day. Reading those things helps me out. So try something like that. And again, I'm a morning person. Again, this is knowing yourself, but harnessing that morning. And that I think if you're going to get up early, that also means go to bed early, having the good sleep hygiene. You're not like looking at your phone all night long or checking emails before bed. You're going to sleep and then get up early. And for me, early morning exercise is just a great way to set the tone for the day. But again, figure out what works for you. The routine is huge. And also, I think especially for parents, we get in the self-help world and there's all this analysis about all the routine and this and that. And like, man, once you have a family and kids, like very often things are just totally going to go to shit. And you have to be okay with that. And sometimes that means, a lot of that self-help stuff, it may not quite be relevant when you're, kind of managing more than just your own life. And that's okay.
That's so true. And I mean, one tip that I would like to add for those out there who would maybe like to be more consistent with their exercise routine, come join Mark's virtual running club on, what's the app called? Strava or something, right? Strava?
Strava, yeah.
That's the one. I have to warn you all, it's slightly addictive. And I let you guys tell the listeners what the club is all about. And then I'll share a little story about what it has done to me. So Mark, who would like to tell the listeners what that virtual club is all about?
Travis, I'm not sure what it's about. So.
Yeah, all these the details and stuff, starting the phone apps, all that gets a little tough with Alzheimer's. But Dad's still out there. He's putting in the miles. He's doing the work. So in a nutshell, the Alzheimer's Foundation has a fundraising event and project called The Longest Day, and it culminates on June 20th, the summer solstice. Literally in the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year. And it's again, an ongoing project or fundraiser. And Mom and Dad had the idea to sort of start a fundraising team, to gain hopefully donations along the way towards this important organization, but also just to build community. And the idea with the Strava Club, and again, if you haven't tried Strava or you haven't heard of it, check it out. It's a phone app and a website, and if you search for Dad or I on there, you can find sort of our longest day team. It's called Team Macy Endure, and the concept is for free, no cost, no requirement of anything. You can just join our team, and then your miles that you do running, biking, walking, hiking, swimming, skiing, whatever activity you want to do, those miles sort of go into the team total. And we're just kind of hoping to accumulate as much as we can. And the initial goal is, can we get enough miles to go across the United States? And then slowly all these people started joining. And, now I think we're getting, like my mom said, 15,000 miles a month or something. And the new project is like, can we sort of virtually visit neat places around the world where Dad has raced? So, Morocco, New Zealand, Australia, Borneo, Patagonia, we're kind of accumulating those miles to sort of virtually hop around. But, like you said, Claudia, there's the fundraising component, but, as with all this stuff, a big goal is just, let's get people out there making the most of life. Hopefully that includes some sort of exercise component and kind of being part of something bigger than yourself. That can help get you out the door.
Yeah, and fantastic. And I love that virtual running club. And here's the little story that I promised. So Mark invited me to join that club like a couple of months ago. And since I love running, I thought, why not? And if it's a way to support Mark and the Alzheimer's Association, I'd be more than happy to join. So that was my first thought. And the second thought was like, holy crap, did I just sign up to be in a running club with a bunch of ultra endurance athletes? So, I love running, but hey, I just run for fun. So I would usually go for a 5 to 6K run in the morning, maybe a bit of a longer run on the weekend. And the longest distance I've ever run was a charity half marathon a couple of years ago. And then I joined Mark's team and I thought, maybe I can run more. So let's just see how much I can run this month. So I set myself a challenge to run at least 200 kilometers in March. And I know for you ultra runners out there, that might still be something you run on a weekend. But for me, it was still a lot of running. And I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to do it or whether I would not be able to do it. But as I said, just seeing the progress in the club and seeing everyone else put in the miles, it was super fun. It was super motivating. And so I ended up running 232 kilometers in March. And it was, yay. And the funny thing about that is once I did that, I started thinking, okay, so 230 is doable. How about 300 kilometers? Maybe that would work as well. Or maybe that's really pushing the limit here. I'm not sure. So who knows where this is going to take me? I might end up running a marathon this year. And for our listeners out there, if you're listening to this episode and you would like to sponsor my very first marathon attempt, please reach out to me and let me know. Because right now I can confidently run 10 kilometers. I can run 15 kilometers. And I'm pretty sure I can run a half marathon without dying. But I have no idea if I can run a marathon. So if you want to sponsor a newbie's marathon attempt, I promise to donate all the money to the Alzheimer's Association. So if you want to support them and or see me suffer while I attempt to run that marathon, just let me know. And guys, what do you think? If we find someone to sponsor that marathon attempt, will you give me some tips on how to best prepare for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good for you, Claudia. Way to go. And I think you're seeing back to that idea of perspective, when oftentimes, the only way to gain perspective is you just have to do it. You got to do it step by step, the ups and downs, the challenges, and that's how you make it through. And I also like that, with your running, you're taking it gradually. Again, you're not going from zero running to 300 kilometers per month. You're building up steadily and hopefully listening to your body and making sure that you're rested and fueled and getting enough sleep, all that kind of stuff. That's the way to make it consistent, right? With anything, almost anything in life, and especially with running, consistency is the key. It's not doing anything incredible on a given day. But yeah, I totally believe, Claudia, if you want to do a marathon, that you can. And sure, I'm happy to give you some tips for the preparation and running, etc.
I'm sure it's still a little bit scary, but if we find someone, I promise to do it. I promise to give it a try. So.
All right. Yeah. Good for you.
Awesome. So last but not least, where can our listeners find you online if they wanted to connect with you or learn more about what it is that you do? Travis?
Want me to give that a shot, Dad?
Well, I'm easy to find, or as a matter of fact, I can't be found for the most part. I don't have anything online. I just, I got a phone and it drives me crazy and nobody calls me anyway, but so.
No, you look at Facebook some, Dad, and Dad and Mom go through that together. Dad always enjoys getting messages on Facebook or Instagram. So yeah, he's there. Facebook, just look for Mark Macy, and Instagram, Dad is at mmacy146. So again, he's got a bit of a tech support team helping to get some stuff up there, but that's
no, really. Do I have that? Do I have somebody like that?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know I had a team.
Yeah, me, Mom, and my sister Caitlin. But Mom's been posting on Dad's Instagram some of those updates, especially I think she put up a picture recently of the Morocco Eco Challenge with Dad and his whole team. Riding some camels, and so some good memories and stuff on there. I'm mostly on Instagram. That's at Travis Macy, and then the new project, that Dad and I are doing together is our podcast. So we've been similar to you, Claudia. You jump into something new, you don't know when and where it's going to go. You got a lot to learn, but we're loving it. It's been really fun to host a lot of those episodes together, and we've been talking with endurance athletes, with business people, with ex-Navy SEALs, connecting with the Alzheimer's community as well, and that's just travismacy.com/podcast.
Awesome. So thank you so much again for being on the show today. I really enjoyed connecting with you and talking with you guys. So I hope we can stay in touch and maybe talk again soon.
Please do, Claudia.
It's been great talking to you, and I'm glad we met you, and we hope to stay in touch with you, okay?
Yeah,
yep.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Good luck to you and all you're doing. Thanks to the listeners for being with us today, and it's been a lot of fun.
So take care, everyone, and talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show. It would mean the world to me because you'd help me reach more entrepreneurs like yourself who would love this show. If you'd like to learn more about creating a widely successful business without sacrificing your health, relationships, or sanity, make sure to stick around and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And why don't you help me spread the word and share this show with your friends? I'd really appreciate it, and I'm sure your friends will too. Want to continue this conversation, build real relationships, and join a community of like-minded entrepreneurs? Come join my free Facebook community for visionary entrepreneurs. I would love to see you there. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already, grab my free brain priming audio file for entrepreneurs and start priming your brain for success in less than 5 minutes each morning. Curious? You can learn more about how this works and download the audio file at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions. Until next time, bye!